Well, hello, lovely YouTuber. Thank you so much for choosing to watch the podcast on this platform. I really do appreciate you being here. And I hope that you're really enjoying the content that I bring to you from all of these incredible guests who talk about creativity and what it does for them, but more importantly, just about their lives and how they've overcome difficulties. If you like the content, it would be amazing if you could, first of all, give me a little thumbs up, ding, 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 because it really pushes me out into the algorithm. And that means that other people who might need to see this content will get a chance to see it. But also as well, any comments you make underneath, anything like that, it really helps get the word out there. And of course, I love reading your comments because I like to know if I'm doing the right thing, if I'm bringing you what you want. So thank you for watching, sit back, and I hope that you enjoy this next episode. Well, hello, lovely listener, and welcome back to another episode of Breaking the Blocks. I'm your host, Rachel Pearman. When I started this account, Breaking the Blocks, I was hoping that my guests would be vulnerable enough and open enough to talk about the troubles that they had experienced, the difficulties in their lives, in order to perhaps inspire you or help you in anything that you're facing at the moment. I could not have imagined the level of honesty and vulnerability that I have received from so many of my incredible guests that I've talked to date. Mathew was no exception. If you followed Mathew on Instagram during 2020, 21 too, you would have seen Mathew having an awful time, a breakdown, a complete mental breakdown. In this interview, we discuss why that was the case, what happened, and what triggered those events. Now, I have to warn you that this interview could be quite triggering for some because Mathew talks about sexual abuse, childhood abuse, suicide, and as I've mentioned, is very open about these subjects. I'm hoping that from this interview, you will witness the strength and courage of a person able to overcome those challenges, perhaps find something to hang on to for yourself if you are facing any of these difficulties or you know anybody who is. But I want you to know that there is hope. And if you are being authentic to yourself, as Mathew has, and you have put yourself out there in a genuine way, in a way that you want to be represented, that you want to be seen, that you are, it's amazing how the right people will find you. And that's what's happening to Mathew. Thankfully, this story has a very different ending than what it could have done. So I hope you'll sit back, be inspired by it, and perhaps take something on board if you're suffering any of the difficulties Mathew went through. Okay, here we are. I just said to Mathew, I don't know what we're going to talk about, Mathew. So we'll just see how it goes and we'll just chat, shall we?
It's going to be amazing.
It is. We've already had a crazy few moments screaming into the microphone and then comparing our eyelashes. I have to say your eyelashes look fabulous. Fabulous,
Thank you.
Darling.
Thank you. I got them done. I learned about the lift and tint last year and they wouldn't put extensions on and it just perms it. And I have 10 millimeter eyelashes. They measured it. So yeah, how big are you? 10 millimeters. Yeah, my lashes, that is.
I love them. Have I just seen a flash of nails as well? Can I see the nails?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
I'm going through my neutral phase. My assistant has been waiting for the neutral phase because while she appreciated my rainbow unicorn phase and it was right for the moment of going through a mental breakdown and entertaining the world during a pandemic, she was ready for my more authentic phase and she knew that. And so like I'm this is my Joanne phase. If anyone follows Lady Gaga, she's like, yeah, do the neutrals, turn it, just be yourself. And I'm like, all right, yeah, I do like neutrals. I like it.
Does she do ever really neutral though, Lady Gaga?
No, she's always fabulous.
She's always fabulous. Well, you know, me and you and Lady Gaga, we've got it all going on, haven't we? Clearly. Anyway, so I don't know where this is going to go. Well, you know, Mathew, okay, in all seriousness, so you've agreed to come on this little podcast because you were doing a lovely piece. I say lovely because I just love what you do. And you were doing this piece about these are my nails. And if I want to wear this nail varnish, I'm going to wear this nail varnish. I said, come on the podcast and tell the world about your nails. And then it got loads of likes. And then you messaged me and said, how do we make this work? And here we are making it work.
That part,
But
all of it. So this is a podcast about nails, in case y'all didn't know.
This is about nails. It's a beauty podcast. Breaking the blocks.
Skincare. And I'm in my mid-40s. I'm assuming you're younger than me, but yeah.
Don't be ridiculous. I'm 54. I'm 54.
I love this for us. Look at us. Yes. It's still fabulous. You wouldn't know.
Well, thank you, dear. But as I said, it will be filtered, so I will look under 50. I like a nice filter on a photograph, but anyway.
Why not?
So listen, Matthew, in all seriousness, you just mentioned there about your, what did you just phrase it as? Your kind of more rainbow colourful era.
Yeah, my rainbow colorful era where I was still the uber queer mascot for people who didn't really care about me. And I tried everything I could to please them, not realizing they just wanted this compartmentalized talent aspect. And so, yeah, it was like a survival thing from some trauma. It's like, if I can make everyone laugh and be like, rah, then I'll be safe. And just my brain broke and I wasn't safe. And I was like, oh yeah, that didn't protect me from anything. It caused me more harm. And so I've just broken it all down to like, I'm showing up authentic myself. I'm learning more about myself, not needing to mask, learned that I'm on the autism spectrum. I'm like, oh my God, my whole life makes sense. That's why I've been doing all of this that way. And it's such a neat little gift that I've given me and my family and those close to me to discover myself authentically and to show up that way. So yeah, no one's going to tell me what I can and cannot do. Like, focus on yourself, folks.
But I think you said something really important there, because you said you've discovered yourself, but you're also showing up as yourself.
Yep.
And that's the key, because a lot of people might know themselves, but are afraid to show themselves. And then others don't know themselves. And as you said, then you put on this kind of outer mask, but the mask always slips and always falls away. And then, yeah.
Sure does.
I first came across you, I have to say, it was the beginning of COVID times.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember you used a Blackpink track. How you like that?
Oh yeah, Blackpink's my ultimate. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll go on solo this year. Super excited.
And well, I've got an 18-year-old daughter who was hugely into Blackpink at that time. Then she went into BTS.
That's fine.
Who knows where she is?
It's okay.
Well, I know where she is. She's still in the house.
I hope you do.
I don't know where she is. She left some time ago. But I showed her because she was like, what is this quilting thing that you're doing, Mother? Because, Matthew, I'm not a quilter. And then I said, look, it can be really cool, Maddie. She loved you. She was like, the fact is using Blackpink. This is enough for me. So I was really interested by you, and I thought that what you were doing, your content was amazing. And I really aspired to be able to create what you were creating. I was like, how is he doing this? But then I did continue to follow you, and then I started to see the breakdown of that persona. So I was there with you the whole way.
Thank you for staying.
And I have to say that I am loving seeing you now, which is why I said come on this podcast, because I think you've broken so many blocks. Yeah. And I think it's amazing what you've achieved. So
thank you.
I don't know where to start with this podcast interview with you, Matthew, because normally there's kind of like one thing that a guest wants to talk about, but with you, I've gone through your history. I know so much about you.
It's been an adventure. I mean, really, the beginning before you showed up to my journey, just the context of all of it is that it was in 2016. I was just looking for a place to like put my sewing stuff. I was making clothes for my daughter Helena, and I didn't want to put them on my personal Facebook, so I put them on Instagram. And I started to grow really fast because I pushed myself, and I was inspired by my daughter in a way that I'd never been inspired creatively before. And I felt like I was finding and building a community, and the quilting community latched on to me early. And I discovered that you could get free stuff on the internet. So I was like, oh, let me try and get my hobby paid for. And so I started like really next leveling. I have a master's in business, one in communication too. And so I was like, I understand how to network. I understand how to build a brand. Let me see what I can do with this. It's growing. So I just kept making next level projects. I don't even really consider myself a quilter, which is wild that I was latched onto so quickly by quilters. Now I understand the why behind it, but since I was trying to like get my stuff paid for, I was reaching out to so many brands and doing brand deals, and people liked my energy, and like I've always been authentic, but then all of that attention had me go in this one direction because I didn't understand the level of attention I was getting. I've never been like cool or popular or any of that. I've always been a weirdo outsider. And I was getting asked to do things that didn't make sense to me. But as a queer human, I was like, we don't get a lot of opportunities either. Let me take them. And one was I was asked to present at my local quilt guild early in my career. Like as a thought lead, I'm like, I don't really quilt, but okay, sure. And then I headlined a quilt show in my area. Like I was the headlining quilter. I didn't even have enough quilts to show. And I was like, really? Sure. I'd never been to a quilt show, had no idea. And so I was getting a lot of attention fast for whatever reason, whether it's because I'm male presenting, because I do identify as non-binary. My pronouns are they, them, but I'm super handsome, so I can't help it. Like if people like, if you and so there was a lot of hate that I was getting that I wasn't aware of. Because I have a daytime job too. So it's like I don't have time to gossip or like do any of that. And like I just don't think that way. I was just doing my thing. And so as I was building this brand and trying to figure out why people liked me so much, I assumed it was because I was bringing joy and I was positive and like I didn't do drama. And so I really leaned into that. And that's when the character of Mr. Domestic, when it was Mr. Domestic,
Yes.
evolved. And I just kept going that way because I didn't know people were saying the same thing, but I didn't understand why I was getting the attention. And I was like, well, it can't be my talent because I'm so new. It must be because of my personality and these other things. Let me really lean into that as a brand. And then I started being more visible, and I was like super outspoken about being queer, and I started getting a lot of pride stuff, and everybody wanted to exploit me for pride stuff. And I just went with it. And as someone on the autism spectrum with a lot of trauma, I said yes to every opportunity, not thinking about it. And as my mental health started to deteriorate, I just was overburdened. And at that time, I haven't really talked about this with many people publicly. My parents disowned me. That was in 2020. My best friend left me. She didn't like how I was suddenly standing up for social and racial injustice. My stepdad didn't like that I was finally stepping up to him with the abuse that he caused me and my sister, and I didn't want my daughter to be around it. And so my personal life was falling apart as this other thing was growing, which was the Mr. Domestic component. And that's when you joined, was the pandemic. It was like the upswing. I was big in quilting, even still. I mean, I do all of the crafts. I'm polycraftual, but I was big. I was everywhere suddenly. And as I got my new assistant, because my best friend was my assistant, she helped me get from underneath all of these obligations. And I started to see what had actually happened and what was going on and who I was actually entertaining and who I was focused on and how discordant it was from my own values, that I started to shift. As I would stand up for things, I would get a bunch of hate that I didn't anticipate, because the way my brain works is like, oh, it's yeah, right. I need to say something about like Black Lives Matter. I need to say something about queer people. I need to say something about like, I need to use my platform. The hate, the worst was when I stood up for myself for actual harm that was being caused to me. And then those quilters that were like-minded to me really, really pummeled me. And that's one of the things that broke my brain. And you were probably there for that too.
Yeah, I do not understand this hate thing. I
Mm-mm.
don't understand. I have never and will never comment on anything that I don't like. And I never feel that hatred for anything. It's like if I don't like something, I'll unfollow,
Yep,
or I'll
same
just
thing. Same.
ignore. I won't watch it. If somebody recommends a TV series and I watch the first episode, if I find it offensive or I don't enjoy it, I simply don't watch it.
That.
And if my friend says to me, "Did you watch that drama?" I'll go, I thought it was really misogynistic rubbish. And I will actually say it, but I
Same.
won't, I won't turn around to that person and go, so why did you do, I hate you. Yeah. But I could not understand, because I know the history with you. And I know that brands started dropping you.
Yep.
And people were being vile. And then I was like, what is going on? This person, for a start, as you've said, you were entertaining. And it's very easy to like you, Mathew. I mean, we've only met for 10 minutes and I already want to move next to you like
Let's
some
do
wheel
that.
stalker.
Let's do that. But I'll come to you.
You come to me. You won't like it here. No, you won't like it here.
I don't know that you'll like it.
But seriously, where does this hate come from? What was the worst? You mentioned, I was looking through your Instagram, and you mentioned death threats.
I did.
You said at one point you were getting death threats. What were they actually like? Were people seriously saying, I'm going to come to your house and kill you?
Well, at the same time, I was getting do you know the Libs of TikTok account?
No.
When I was speaking out on stuff, there's this they're conservative. Whatever your ilk, it's great. I don't care. Just don't cause people harm and stuff. Well, she posted some stuff that when I was talking about some things over on her it was Twitter at the time. And she wasn't a quilter. She's just a hater and very vile in America. And that sent me the worst of the death threats. And that, I expected, I was like, really, are they going to do stuff? Every time I would get one, I'd send it to the FBI. I'd follow the thing, send it. But I would get it from quilters. And it was shocking. There were oh, you should just go and kill yourself. You should die. As I was having a mental breakdown. People threats to my daughter. I'm going to come find you and your daughter. That's why I removed my daughter from social media and won't share her anymore. It was I know where you live, and they would look up my address and send me a screenshot of my address. You better stop talking this way about things or we're going to come find you. You'll never work in the industry again. It was a bunch of that I was like, really? For why? What if I've never done anything to anyone. I just don't. It's not my thing. The one time I ever used someone's name, that woman had caused me so much harm. Then I'll never do that again because it felt really dirty and gross to do that. I realized my platform can cause harm. I didn't want to send anyone harm that the way that I've received it. And so yeah, it feels gross. I don't understand. I don't understand why I became this face of patriarchy and men infiltrating crafts that all of these women felt entitled to getting that attention. And I'm the first to say, yeah, I saw it. That's why I did so many fundraisers. That's why I used so many other people's patterns and fabric and designs and elevated them. That's why I was constantly uplifting people ad nauseum, even at my expense of making money. I was doing it. I saw it too. But now it's no, I got the skills. I got the talent. I get it. And it's fun. I have fun. But I don't understand the hatred, because it wasn't just jealousy. It was, I want to cause you harm. It wasn't just mean comments. It was wild. The whole experience was wild, which made it hard for me to want to get back in. And I wasn't sure if I'd ever want to quilt or craft or...
Was that hatred worse when you were standing up for people's rights and things that you believed in? Or did it get worse when you were actually talking about your own struggles? Because you were very open with the trauma you were going through and what you were facing. So when was the hate the worst?
It felt the worst when I talked about myself. The one time I stood up for myself, it felt the worst. And it might have felt the worst because these were before people who I considered allies and friends, people who I had made money for. And all I was doing was sharing a personal experience about harm that was caused to me, then criticizing a couple of systems that weren't inclusive to the queer community. And that wow, the level of harm and hate. There's a Reddit post that's the controversy of Mr. Domestic. When you Google that, people going in, it's none of it's accurate, because it's not I stood up and defended myself and corrected any of it. I just let it happen. But that's when it felt the worst to me. But whenever I initially stood up for Black Lives Matter and racial injustice the very first time, and I wouldn't let people back down, that was a huge volume. but it didn't feel as bad because I was like, oh, okay. I mean, my spouse is Black. Like, why would you think I wouldn't stand up for this stuff? It's kind of weird. So I didn't take it personally. I was like, okay, cool. Y'all never like bought anything of mine anyway. But it was those people that were supposed to be in my corner and understand things like intersectionality and want to have a conversation and be open to critique. And no, it wasn't that way. And then no one stood up for me. That was the wildest thing because I'm the first person that would have stood up for anyone. I stood up for everyone. No one publicly stood up for me. There were people in my ear that actually propelled me to do these things. That's something that I never spoke on. People would get my DMs. Hey, Mathew, can you speak up on this? Oh, sure. I'm autistic, so I don't think about the consequences. I assumed they thought of it. And I was like, yeah, I can go do that. And I would do it because it was right, but I didn't think about the impact of the harm on me. And so a lot of those that blew up in my face were that someone else was a part of that, got into my ear. They were a little too close. They had more privilege than me. And instead of using their privilege, they put it on me to do, which I would do. Just be like, sure. And it made everything tumble and crumble. And not a single one of any of them came out and said, oh, I'm sorry, first of all, or yeah, I agree with Mathew with what they did. I'm happy for that. That was weird too. I didn't understand that. Like, was it because I was so big that people assumed I was so strong because I come across confident, which I'm not? Like, I didn't. I was just a human trying to like help. And I don't get it.
I think maybe there is a jealousy thing, though. I think as soon as you become so well known and you're doing so well, it's like, I do think that sometimes some people are so light that if you are living in the dark, it kind of blinds you. You look at people with this kind of light around them or whatever, and it's just like, I can't deal with that because it's triggering them. That doesn't make it right, their behavior, but they get triggered by things. So I think people were maybe they were just, it sounds like they were like bees buzzing around you from all sorts of camps. There were people who didn't want to hear your anti-racism comments and didn't want to hear about, as you said, the queer stuff, the sticking up for people's rights and all sorts of movements. And then everything. But I've heard you say, art is community.
Yeah.
So this must have been such a shock for you that this community kind of turned on you.
It was shocking. It was shocking. Only because at the time I was so hyper focused on those people causing me harm. I was so hyper focused on trying to please and win over those people who never would want me to be successful ever. There's even a gaggle of gays that like, they were so ready to pounce on me. That was painful too. I was like, really? Wow. Why? Okay. But since I've done my healing and like moved through it, I no longer focus on that. The last thing I ever expected was, as I was going through like my mental downturn, for my community to explode, because everyone was telling me it was going to ruin everything. I didn't expect that like I would suddenly have over 1 million followers on all my platforms. I didn't. But that was just me being authentic and real. And I guess people like that. And it allowed me to heal and feel supported. And so now I focus on the community that I've built, that I have, that are people that come to me for so many reasons. And so I don't think I'll get impacted by the hate anymore. I know to expect it. And it's all based on jealousy, really. I'm not jealous in general. So it's not me, but like, it's all based on that. And so if it happens, it's like, okay, whatever.
So I'm interested then in the turn, because the only thing that's changed really about you is that, as you've said, you are being more authentic, but you're still out there.
Yeah.
You still say all that stuff.
Yep.
So how has it died down? How has it changed? Because I would have thought they would have just kept going and going. I mean, obviously you would have blocked a lot of people, but you can't keep blocking tens of thousands of people. So how has it stopped?
I think part of it is the more that I've shared my story and some people understanding how really bad things have been, how my life has been, the fact that I've been sexually assaulted by 20 men, that I was sexually assaulted by my stepdad and my sister was, that I actually had a psychotic break that my dream job tried to fire me and they didn't succeed, but it's what caused all of that. Like there was a lot going on behind the let me entertain ya. I think that's part of it that people are like, oh wow, okay. I didn't realize that. I wasn't doing it for the intent of them feeling bad for like picking on me or whatever, but that's part of it. And I have changed how I communicate about things instead of as what I call poking the bear or being really confrontational when I bring up issues. I lean into my vulnerability and I share stories and I do it more of a look at us as opposed to look at you. And that seems to bring more people in. And I've shifted that aspect of it. And I think the combination of the two has been what's shifted it. I'm sure it still is out there. I'm sure. But as long as they're not causing me harm. I've got a lawyer on my team now, so bring it. Y'all want to try me now? I won't call you out, but I'll call my lawyer and we'll get involved there. And I'm no longer dependent on brands to where people don't have that leverage over me that disagree with me, which is what people would do a lot of times is if I would say something that they didn't like, a lot of people would then reach out to those brands. That I'm just going to build it on my own. And if brands do want to partner with me how I am now, great. That's awesome. I want to make sure your values are aligned because they have to be if I'm going to work with you. But I have the connections and the know-how to like build it. It's like, why can't I have an epic quilt store in the Pacific Northwest in America that represents inclusive, diverse values where everyone feels included? Why can't I build that? Why not? I think that would be awesome. So I'm more into like, what can I do? Because I don't have to do any of this. I can step away. I'd be fine. My life is great. I love my spouse, my daughter, the friends I have, my chosen family. Like, I found the joy in sewing and crafting again for myself. Like, I don't have to do any of this. So I think I just feel liberated from needing to please other people, that I don't need to focus on those people who want me harm to make sure that they're going to be okay and not harm me, which is something I've done my whole life. And I just get to focus on me and living my life and building. And if things do happen, I'll be prepared for it and ready and just not be shocked by it happening. Because the bigger I get, it's going to continue to happen. And okay, it has nothing to do with me. It's about them.
So I have a question for you then. When you were at the worst point, when the hate was flooding in, the death threats were coming in and all of that stuff, why didn't you just go, I'm shutting everything down? I'm closing all my social media. Was it a financial thing that you had to keep working? You needed the brands, or what made you keep going, Mathew? Because so many people would have gone, I am out of here. I am closing my accounts down.
Part of it was I didn't know I had PTSD at the time and I was dissociated. Like 2022, I wasn't present for most of it, and only someone who has PTSD will understand. I wasn't really there. That's when my job fell apart, and I was asking for accommodations for my autism, my ADHD, and PTSD, and the company I worked for refused to grant me any, and it actually caused me to have my psychotic break when they tried to fire me. So that's part of it. I was like, I wasn't in control, but the other part was I was still trying to control it. I thought I'm always of the mindset if there's ever conflict or something going on, you can just talk about it. Like, come, let's talk about it. Let's work through it. Let's process it. Like, let's get on the other side of that. So there was still that thing that allowed me to survive all the stuff I've been through in my life. I was still trying to do because to me, a lot of it was just miscommunication. I was like, no, let's talk about it. Like, that's not what I was saying. You misunderstood what I was saying. You misunderstood my intent. Like, why were you doing this? I don't understand why you caused me harm. Did everyone else know that this happened? And then I was like, oh, everyone did know, and y'all were okay with it. Oh, that was kind of like a, but I didn't know any better. I didn't.
Yeah.
And it's not the worst that I've dealt with. So, it's not the worst. It was the worst to the point that all aspects of my life were falling apart. To where I attempted suicide a year and a half ago. So that my brain finally shut down and was like, you need to change the way you operate to where I'm not on social as much and I don't post as much now. But when I was going through it, part of it was I was just super overwhelmed with the things I still had to do. I had contracts with brands, I had to get it done. But yeah, I've never been hyper focused on commodifying any of this. I don't need this money. I don't need it. I'm grateful for it. And I would love, like, my retirement plan is to build this to where I wouldn't have to have a day job and this would just be what I do. And like, I float into the sunset with my spouse and family. Like, that would be lovely. Why can't I do that? But it's never been my focus. My focus has always been community. And I've never really had that, and I didn't want to lose it.
Okay, so let's go back to your. Do you mind talking about your parents and the fact
Yeah.
that you said that they've disowned you?
Yeah.
So, what's happened there then? I'm presuming this has been a very difficult relationship from when you were tiny, because, as you said, you've suffered from abuse in your childhood.
I did. It's not why people would assume, because it was kind of at the same time that I came out as non-binary. People assume it has to do with that. It's not that. It's my stepdad was horrible, abused me and my sister. My sister passed away of an accidental prescription drug overdose 15 years ago. She got the brunt of it when she was younger. When we were both younger, she kind of stepped in and took some away from me. But I didn't know most of it was happening. And I remember when she had her psychotic break, that she would ask me if I remembered stuff. I didn't remember a lot of it. I didn't remember a lot of the abuse. I knew there was like physical abuse. I didn't remember the sexual abuse until I had my own psychotic break a year and a half ago. And then all these memories flooded in, and I was like, holy crap. Wow. All of these memories that I had thought were not necessarily positive, but not like horrendous, were like, whoa, that's what actually happened.
So, do you think you blocked out those memories? It
I
wasn't that
did.
you were too young to remember. It was that the
They were
brain just
not in
went,
my brain. They were not
we
in my
can't.
brain. They blocked out.
We have
And
to.
that's how I've gotten through a lot of the stuff that I've been through. That's as like, I know my body will shut down, like all the sexual assault, everything I've experienced, like it just shuts down, and then I compartmentalize and I put it away, and I wouldn't remember it the way it actually happened until what happened a year and a half ago. So but my daughter, there's something about, I didn't realize this would happen, but having my child and not wanting her to experience what I did, it's like as she gets to certain ages, I heal through that age in myself. And it's such an interesting thing that I'm like, oh, it's like that's when those memories happen from that childhood and I'm able to heal through it. So it's about the time that she was like 6, 7, which is when my abuse started, that I started to heal through my version that I had in my brain at the time. And I was like, I don't want my daughter to be around any of that. I'm not going to allow this man to treat me the way he did. I'm not going to allow him to treat my daughter. He actually wouldn't even let me in my childhood home when she was born. I flew down to Houston. I live in the Northwest. He refused to allow me in the home to like pick up my mom. And so I just got tired of that. And it was my mom's birthday. It was 2019. I was doing the circuit. I had a quilt show and a class and something in Texas. So I was like, let me go pop into my mom's birthday party, give her a quilt. It was a beautiful quilt that I gave her. But I emailed him before. I was like, hey, you can't do any of this whenever I'm there. It's not going to happen. If you're going to come for me, like, it's my daughter. You're not going to do that. And I just ignored him the entire time and pretended like he wasn't there. He sat on the couch, was a lump. I mean, he's horrible. So I was like, good. I got through it, moved on. I think that didn't sit well for him. So when the pandemic happened, my mom and I talked every day, by the way. Like, even though she enabled a bunch of this, like, she and I were close. Like, she loved me in her own way. She did protect me from some stuff. She enabled like a lot of it. And like, there's a reason that all of my siblings experience things of this nature. But when the pandemic happened, and I saw like where my family was combined with or compared to where I was values wise, I was like, oh, y'all support that person? Y'all are never going to support me. Oh my God. It was just shocking. And he had watched Fox News. I'm sure y'all know what Fox News is over there. You've heard of it. He's watched Fox News for like 20 years. So he's like that person that has like the Fox News logo emblazoned on the TV. And my mom, we were having a conversation and I corrected her because she and I would have hard conversations. I was like, do you know that what you just said was racist? Like, I don't know why you said that. Let's not do that. And then she'd be like, oh, I didn't realize it. And so I think at that time, my stepdad decided I wasn't going to talk to her anymore. And he deleted my number from her phone and took her phone. And as the pandemic was raging and about to hit where they were, I couldn't get a hold of her. I eventually found her in a hospital somewhere. She had surgery or fell down or something. I talked to her, and I remember distinctly during that conversation, she was like, "Oh, wow, I really do enjoy having conversations with you." And I didn't know what she meant at the time when she said that. It wasn't until I realized I was disowned. Um, and then we got off the phone. I gave her my number. I was like, call me. Like, why aren't we talking? I don't understand. I really need my mom. It was like right after my best friend had like decided she wanted to be friends with me because she didn't like how I was standing up for stuff. And then my niece, who is my sister who passed away, she and I are so close, like super duper close, that I was in charge of my sister's life insurance policy when she passed. We were best friends. Of course I was. I did exactly with the money what I was supposed to do, which was make sure to get myself in a position to where I'm cool, put the rest of it away, pay for her college, which I've done, and then put it in a trust and she's going to get it when she's 30. My stepdad had made up a lie saying that I used that money to adopt my child, which I didn't. That was shocking. I think that was the first thing that kind of broke my brain. I was like, why are you trying to harm my relationship with Maddie? They didn't even know I paid for her college. They didn't know I had a trust. They just assumed this other stuff, which didn't happen. And my mom supported that, allegedly. And my oldest sister, she didn't want to help, but eventually she told me what was going on. And I was like, wow, what's up? So I reached out. I texted. And his response was, you're not going to talk to your mom until you give Maddie all of her money. And I was like, what? What is this? It was wild to me. So I sent them an email. He sent me an email back pretending to be my mom, saying that I was disowned, that they wanted no part of me, that I was just some liberal, educated person who thought he was better than everyone, and they wanted no part in my life. And so then I responded. I fully went in on him, and that was the end of it. I did reach out to the cops in the area just to do an adult protective check to make sure that my mom wasn't being abused. And that was the end of it. That's the last I heard from any of them. And since then, my niece and I are great, and she's come and visited, and like our relationship's solid. Like of course, like I'm close to her. The reason I've achieved what I have in my life was because when my sister passed away, I needed to step up. I like quintupled my income. I like busted my butt, got a couple of masters, got to a status in my life because I needed to take care of her too. Like I did all of these things. Never a thanks, good job. I'm happy you did that. I think that my stepdad just wanted some money. He was trying to get money from my niece because that's what he always did. And that whole thing was the beginning. It's like that's when my personal life fell apart, and I no longer have my mom anymore, and I was like, I don't know what to do with that. And then the Mr. Domestic started to fall apart, and then my day job fell apart. So it was like during those 2 years, these things were happening, and like no one online cared about those other things. It felt like. So that's what happened with being disowned. It's a lot more complicated than it just a gender thing. It's that my stepdad is a horrible, horrible, horrible human. Horrible. And he manipulated my mom as she's getting older in her mid 80s and her brain's deteriorating. I know my grandma had Alzheimer's. And yeah, but I broke the cycle, and my kid doesn't have to deal with any of that, and I'm able to heal from what I've gone through, and now I can show up for others online and be there for them. And I'm saddened by it, but also grateful that it happened, because I don't know that I would have been able to heal had that not happened.
Yeah. It's interesting you said that about breaking the cycle there, Matthew. Do you believe in generational traumas and that someone has to come along and break those traumas?
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that. Yeah.
Yep. And I did it.
You feel you're that person. Yeah.
I did it.
I know I've just asked this question and you said, well, it was to do with you've been autistic. You didn't, because I said, where did you find this drive from to carry on? And you said, because I was autistic, I didn't kind of know. But there has to be another drive underneath. I mean, where does this drive come from? Because my goodness me, you have gone through so much rejection, abuse, heartache, trauma, loss, grief. There has got to be an inner drive coming from somewhere with you. Where do you find it?
It's when I know I'm right, I'm right. And it takes a lot for me to realize I'm right about something. It's not like I get one piece of information and I'm like, oh, this is what's up. It's like I knew I was right. I knew I was right to stand up for myself. Even though the things that I spoke about online, sometimes it was done in a way that like, oh, I get why I got that kind of like backlash, or I shouldn't have done it that way. There's not a damn thing that I ever said where I was incorrect. My assessment of it was always correct. And I'm not going to be gaslit into thinking that something is wrong when I know that I'm right. So I have a strong, firm sense of justice. That's something I actually got from my sister Tanisha. She taught me how to fight and to stand up for things. And I've always done that for others. Never knew how to do that for myself because I always operated and thought that, oh, if I'm doing this for other people will do this for me. And I learned that's actually not true. That my willingness to do that for other people is actually rare. And that I need to do it for myself because I need to show my daughter how to do it. So the biggest drive for me is now that I'm a dad and I have this little kid, that's looking up to me, that I want to be the best version of myself for her and give her the best shot that I didn't have. And God, all I gotta do is look at her, and that like keeps me going. And I'm not gonna like get beat down because I can't let her see that. I can let her see like when things are hard, but I'm not gonna let her see that like it's just too much. I'm so glad that she didn't have the awareness of things when they were at their worst. But that's it. It's like I'm a dad and I'm doing it right. And I'm not just living for me, I'm living for my sister Tanisha, who didn't make it. She didn't survive all this. And so that's it. It's just somehow I got here and these amazing things are happening around me. And I've never been able to take stock in anything because I've been so like numb, and I'm no longer numb. And so now it's like, nah, you thought I was rising. Watch the phoenix rise now. Watch it rise now, everyone, because I'm about to put on a show and I'm going to do it on my terms. And wow, am I going to take a bunch of people with me? So that's my drive, is just, I'm not going to let everything I've gone through be in vain and for nothing. That's it.
Do you think, Mathew, that one of the reasons that you have stood up for people, and as you've said on your Instagram, you want to create a safe space for those people, do you think part of that is because no one stood up for you and no one gave you a safe space? I know you've just said you thought people would do that, but I'm not saying that. I'm saying you didn't stand up for people because you thought, well, if I do it for them, they'll do it for me. No, your initial reaction was you wanted to create this safe space for people. Do you think that's come from an overprotectiveness of other people because you have felt so unprotected yourself?
Totally.
Yeah.
Like the messages I get, I'm shocked that I'm making that kind of an impact. It's wild. Um, yeah, the only person who ever did it was my sister, and she did it fiercely. And so that's the only way that I know how to do it. But those that stood with me as I was going through all of it, like, I owe it to them. I owe it to you. But there are a lot of people who grew up and are existing now feeling the way that I have my whole life. And I do create safety for them. And me living visibly and thriving makes them feel seen. And I didn't have that. And so all of this, it's so much bigger than sewing and crafting and quilting. That's just my medium of expression in art right now. That it's for all of them. It's for all of that. And it could be the conservative person who's mindset has shifted because of the way I communicate things to someone who has a newly out queer or trans or non-binary kid that appreciates what I do, to the kids and adults in the community that feel seen and feel like they can be themselves. I don't see a lot of people doing that, especially in sewing and crafting. People are not doing that. There's no one doing that. I don't see it. I don't see it. If I saw it, I'd be there. I don't see it. And previously, I had thought that I was super tough and could just take everything. And so it's like, I will be the shield. I will protect all of you. But my brain told me, no, that's not the truth. You've never been that. You're not that. You can't just take everything. And so I don't approach it that way anymore. I'm not Superman. I can't stand in front. But wow, can I really have some firm boundaries and create an environment where others feel seen and let the straight, white, cisgender, able-bodied person know that when they're in my affinity space, that we're not going to center you. It doesn't mean you can't have a good time, but I want to make sure that the person who's having the hardest time in the room feels comfortable and seen. And their existence doesn't get to be the reason that I've got to focus on you because you're uncomfortable, because that's a you problem. It's not an us problem. It becomes a you problem if someone who's trans makes you feel uncomfortable. Oh yeah, this isn't the space for you. You can go anywhere. You can literally go anywhere. But people want to have fun with me because, like, I am special, and I never saw that my whole life, because there's something about abuse that sticks with you, and I always felt not worthy of anything. That's what penetrated. Even when people were like questioning me, it's like, y'all, I don't think I'm better. I actually don't feel like I'm worthy of any of this attention. I don't feel like I'm worthy of anything good. And finally, I'm feeling that.
I was just going to say, do you feel it now?
Do
you really feel that?
I do. I'm worthy of it. I'm worthy of it.
Yay!
Yeah, I feel that. And it's like, wow, that's such a powerful feeling. I've never felt worthy really of anything. I felt like I always had to prove myself, and no matter what, I never did enough. And now I feel like I'm worthy of showing up as myself. That's what I'm worthy of. And if my authenticity builds a badass brand and community, then heck yeah, I'm worthy of that too.
Yeah, you are worthy. You are. And
Thank
your
you.
daughter is going to be so proud of you.
Thank you.
How old is she now?
She's 10.
So, I mean, she's
going to be 11 in May.
She's already proud of you. So, Mathew.
Some nails.
Nails. No, let's...
Nails of beauty.
Let's leave the nails for a second. So I want to ask you something because, you know, one thing that I battled with in my life, and I still do to some extent. I mean, I'm kind of learning as well. I've gone through a whole 3-year journey in the COVID as well, where people have dropped away from my life and I've stepped away from people. And it's difficult, isn't it? It's difficult to let go of those people, but and to lose people along the way. When you've gone through what you've gone through, you must, well, this is a silly thing to say, you must have had so much anger. I mean, obviously, there was huge anger for you inside of you, anger, rage, bitterness to a level I cannot imagine. How have you dealt with that? Because I think that's a stumbling block for so many people on different levels. Someone upsets them, it makes you angry, or you make yourself angry. So how have you coped with that anger and that bitterness about everything that has been done to you?
Yeah. And I'm still angry. I just have learned to process through that. And when I was showing up angry on the internet, it's my belief that when you show up with an emotion on the internet, that you get stuck in that emotion. So if I would show up angry, that didn't allow me to process through it, because then I'd have to come and respond to people responding to my anger, and it would make me angry again. And so I was just trapped in that anger. And so every time I would show up angry, it's like I couldn't get out of that anger. So now I don't show up to the internet until I process through that. And I'm at a place of either solutions or resolution, or whatever was happening has happened already. So I don't get trapped in that emotion. I'd rather get trapped in gratitude, or trapped in learning, or trapped in vulnerability than trapped in anger. That's part of it. Therapy's been lovely. But really unpacking all of it and understanding the why which is simple jealousy for a lot of it. For the other stuff that's happened in my life, I was failed by a lot of adults my whole life. I can't be that adult for other people. And it's really just working through it. And I think a lot of people don't want to work through it. And they don't realize that they need to be healing. There's so, like, we all are broken from the pandemic. I wish everyone would understand we are all psychologically broken. And if you're not in a place of healing, you're in a place of harming. And just realizing that has allowed me to have empathy for others. But it's really sitting with the discomfort and realizing that I need to take control of my mental health and my life and my state, and sit with the feelings to process it inside of me and not on the internet or on social media. And that's it. But the anger is still there. I've learned to live with it, and it allows me to create boundaries for myself when I protect myself. And it reminds me why I have boundaries, or why I'll say no, and why I'll do things in a certain way. And I have to remind myself not to do the things I did before, to get overwhelmed by obligations that were mostly exploitative. And that's it. It's like I don't have the ability to get angry like that again, because it could destroy me. It almost did. It almost did. It was a lot to process once I was finally able to process stuff. It was a lot. I'm sober, so that helps. I haven't drank since like
2006, was it?
Yeah, so it's been a long time. So oh my God, I don't allow myself to numb out.
And this is something I was just going to pick up on, because I think that is what the problem is for so many people. People run from their feelings, from their trauma, from their fears, and this has not been judgmental, because it's hard to do the work.
It's hard.
And you know something? I ran for years.
Yeah,
I ran for years. I created drama for years because it felt like home. Same. I get it. But there comes a point when you realize that all of your coping mechanisms are not working anymore. And actually, people who you really respect are beginning to see you and go, that's not nice. And you start losing people and hurting people. And then you're hurting yourself. And then the whole thing just explodes. Yep. So I think you're absolutely right when you say about not going onto social media, which is where, when these people are ranting at you, they are angry, and they're not listening to what's triggering them. They're not listening to where's this coming from? Why do you feel uncomfortable? Now, I'm not sitting here saying you shouldn't. I'm saying you need to look at where that's coming from for you. Because for me, I look at everybody on this planet and I see us all as human beings. We're all souls living in these meat puppets.
Yep.
So we should all just be going, well, you're okay, I'm okay, and you're okay. So, but when something triggers you, you have to look inside, don't you? And look at where that trigger's coming from. Do you have any suggestions of how you do that? Because there might be someone listening right now. This is about breaking the blocks. There might be someone listening right now, Matthew, who thinks, okay, I get that. How do I find out where that trigger is hitting me? How do I find out what it is that's making me do that? Do
you have to sit with it and don't respond. Like, shut your mouth. That's the first thing, is just be quiet and sit with it. And it's even something that I tell my kid when because she's having lots of emotions and stuff that are new for her. And I'm like, does the emotion match the moment? Is it based on right now? Is there something occurring right now that is causing it, or is it based on something other than that? And so that's what we all just need to do. And what I do because I do get triggered by stuff. There's sometimes I get comments and I'm like, oh, I got it. And it's like, well, okay, what's that about? Okay. Yeah. That's not based on now. That's based on what happened in the past. Let's not react that way. Let's step away from it. Give myself some time, but just don't respond or react right away. That's the best thing. And just let it fester. But a lot of people don't want to look at themselves. And that's where the problem comes. They want to point the finger at other people. They don't want to then look at at their own indoctrination and say, oh, it's because I grew up in this religion or I grew up in this household and they said these things when I was a kid, and then it stuck, and I don't know anyone who's trans or non-binary, so of course, like, all of those thoughts are still in my head, so I haven't humanized them. Some people don't want to do that, because then they'll start to see their own flaws and areas that they need to work on. So we all just as humans need to be willing to do that. We're all different. Like, each person is different.
And I think it's also a fear as well, Matthew, that if you do start looking at those, that is not me or you, that is the dog.
That was my dog.
Just if anybody's listening.
That was amazing.
I think Matthew went, mm-hmm.
I love that for us.
I know. He's agreeing though. He's going, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What was I saying? Yeah, I think when people are looking at their own stuff, they will have to look at, as you've said, oh, I lived in a household like this. And that means then you have to start looking at the people around you. And there is a potential that you are going to have to leave those people behind, or certainly erect strong boundaries. So that's another question I have for you. You've obviously learned to erect those boundaries. Now, that's a very difficult thing to do. I know that because I've had to do it, and it's hard. You feel like the bad guy almost.
Always.
Because you're protecting yourself. You feel bad for protecting yourself. What's that about? How do we overcome that?
Whoa. I don't know how to overcome that part, the feeling bad about it. Like, really focusing on how much better your life is and how much peace you have around you. But even still, it's like the trauma sets in with me into where I'm like, I feel bad that I've distanced myself from my family because they would never show up for me and would never support me really the way that I needed to. I was always made to feel like I was the black sheep. Me and my sister both were. That still creeps in, but then it's like, that's not based on reality. It's what I've got to do. Do you really want to go through all of that again and feel not worthy? No. So it's really about choosing who are you going to choose? Are you going to choose yourself? Because those people that you have to create the boundaries for aren't choosing you. They're certainly not going to choose you ever. So who do we want to live for? Do we want to live for ourselves? We just each as humans need to make that choice. Do we want to feel welcome in a community that doesn't represent us or fight for us or share values? And more often than not, people want to stay in those communities, and that's fine. That's cool. Go do that. Don't cause me harm, please. But I haven't chosen that. I've chosen myself. I've chosen myself for the first time in my life at 40. How old am I? 48, 47. Like, it's about time that I choose myself, and it's okay to do that. So that's what we all need to just decide we're going to do. And that helps me with the boundaries.
And not fantasize about what you want those people to be, because it's easy as well when you take that step back after a while to begin to think, oh, well, maybe actually that was good and this was good and that was good. And then you start fantasizing. You create this image in your head of who this person is. But as you just said there, that person is not choosing you. They're not protecting you. So you have to choose you and protect you.
Yep. And that's it. And I've discovered as I do that and people leave and call me a bitch or whatever, that fine, call me what you need to do because I'm standing up for myself, that other people come and create space for other people. And like, exactly. As each of these people that left, like even my mom, my best friends, like some of my family, like I did not realize how much energy and space that unhealthy, dysfunctional relationship was taking up. And then I'm left with all of this space to create and craft and bring more people into my life that share similar values and like respect me and will be there for me. I didn't realize that having those other people in my life was making it to where people who really could show up for me didn't want to be a part. And now they do. And so that's beautiful. It's really beautiful. That's what we all want.
Yeah. And you know, that's the unknown thing. People are frightened about that space. But as you've said, when you create space, it's amazing how many things. I mean, you know, Matthew, I will say to you, I mean, I've wanted you to run a class for me for a long time on Crafty Monkeys, since I first, you know, followed you. And I used to look at you and think, this guy won't even look at me. Oh, look at him with his 6 million followers nearly, and my 22. I mean, I've got a few more than that now, but I used to think, oh, I'm not worthy, and I would think there's no way you would look at me and everything. No, I did. And then when I commented on your nails, it was just a kind of flippant comment, really. But I just thought, yeah, I'm just going to say, come on my podcast. And then I was amazed when you reached out and went, how do we do this? And I firmly believe it's because I have been, particularly in the last 8 months, making space. I've been making space, and those good things come to you, and like energies attract like energies.
It's that part. And it was serendipitous because I don't read all my comments anymore. I don't check all my DMs anymore because I'm always afraid there's going to be one that might trigger me. So I was just like, oh, but yours was towards the top. And then I saw, hey, dog, stop it. You want to see the dog?
What's the dog called?
That is Brianna. And then there's Ruby. There's Ruby who's loud. Come here, Ruby. And then there's
Hey, Ruby. Wow. Hey, Ruby.
Oh my God, really? Girls. Oh my God. It's a package. Are you happy? It's a package. It's like they have to bark at the package. Someone dropped off a package. I had to acknowledge it. Now they're okay.
Yeah, well, there you go. There's the feelings. You've acknowledged those feelings. The dogs have acknowledged their feelings, and now they're fine.
But no, if you would have reached out before, emailed, I would have done it. But we don't know. We don't know what we don't know. Because no matter how big I get, I'm still going to feel like I'm little. Like I'm just a regular person.
Yeah, you are a regular. Well, I wouldn't say you were quite regular. I mean, people have not been through what you've been through, and I got your story.
I want good people around me, and so if y'all are good people, come on, come to me. If you're not, don't. I'm a good person.
So, okay, well, let's go. Before we sort of go then, Matthew, because I think we've done a good therapy session there for people. Let's talk about your creativity then. So what does creativity do for you then?
And I've always been creative my whole life. I've always needed it. It's always been my escape from everything. It's been how I process the world. I did performance stuff. I did theater my whole like childhood, college, undergrad, did a little like professional. And then I realized I didn't want to pretend to be anyone else. I wanted to be myself. And I had a commercial teacher slap my face once in a class, and she told me, she was like, you need to act more like you look. And I was like, I don't want to be someone else. I don't want to pretend like I'm like, I don't know. She was like, I needed to butch it up, or I don't know. And I was like, oh yeah, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to move on. And that's when I became a photographer. And then after that, like I started sewing because I was working with models and making clothes, and it just kept going and kept going and kept going. So what it does for me is it just creates a safe place for me. It's always been a safety for me. Usually in the creative spaces, you can find your people and your tribe. And I've always managed to do that. There's, whether it's a handful or a million, like they find you in creative spaces. And so that's what it does. And I'm baffled that I made it back to sewing and crafting authentically.
Yeah. And you said that you find joy in it now. So how has that changed then? Because I would have thought that your creativity and your sewing would have always given you a safe space and a joy. Was it just that it was stripped away from all of the hate that was related to it on Instagram?
And it was the focus on getting stuff for free and the brand collaborations and obligations, to where everything was an obligation and nothing was for me anymore. And then put on top of that the hate, and it was just not fun. It was not fun anymore. And now, without all the obligations and doing it on my terms, I'm really enjoying it. And I thought that would be the end, and I wouldn't want to like build a business. But then I'm like, no, I'm not going to let these people win and keep me from like building something super great that is needed in the market, that a lot of people would love and support. They would love an inclusive sewing and crafting business, whatever it is I create. I love teaching people. I have a different way of explaining stuff. I love all of that, to where I have like such a backlog of content for YouTube, long form YouTube I need to make. And I've just been waiting, and I'm not rushing it. I'm doing everything on my terms, on my pace. And so, the joy was stripped away by all of it. Like we don't always have to commodify our hobbies.
And you know something? I mean, I was talking to Lucy Engels. You know, do you know Lucy Engels?
I
And
do.
yeah, she's such a sweetie. And she talked with me at the beginning of the pandemic. And then she said to me at one point, I'm going to pull back because I'm kind of feeling overwhelmed by everything. Of course, I took it personally. I thought it was me that she hated. And then
Oh,
I know, and it wasn't. And then I reached out for the podcast. And then she's actually doing a class for me now at the end of this year. But we had a really interesting chat because she said exactly what you said. When it became a job, when it became she had to do this to earn this much money and earn this and bring this in and work with these people, all the joy went. So she's actually gone back to social work now, 2 or 3 days a week, which is what she
I
did
love that
before.
for her.
I know. And then she's now working 2 days a week in a studio and she's loving it. That
Yeah.
joy has come back. And it's amazing how many people I talk to, like you, Matthew, who I guess the dream is to work with the brands, to da. And then as soon as you get that, you go, that's actually the wrong dream. That's not working
That
for me.
wasn't
Because
it. That wasn't
yeah,
it. That wasn't it. But now the dream is this would be a cool retirement. I have an 8-year plan that I'm going to stay in capitalism and peak capitalism, but I'm in HIV pharmaceuticals and I have a life-changing drug that I go and I help the community. Like for a queer human that grew up in the 80s, it's such a lovely gig. I can do that. But I'm like, let me get to 55 to where I can retire because I've been with this company. It's a company I used to work with, so I got my tenure back. Retire early, get my benefits, and then by then this will be a thing. Not just do it slowly and incrementally, not feel like I've got to do this now. I'm not in a rat race. I want to create joy that,
yeah,
sure, I'll take some financial benefit for it that will help me and my family in the future. Cool. Why not? Why can't I do that? I want to do that. Like, that'll be neat. And so I think that making sure I don't rush into it and feel like I got to connect with brands and just doing it on my terms, then it's gonna do that. So there's a way, but if you use the Instagram model and the commerce and ecosystem that is Instagram and social media, and you look at that as the way that you have to do it, no, that's not a path to happiness. That's a path to peak capitalism. Great, if that's what you want to do, but beyond that, it's not. It's not the. It's not. And I was using that as a model for how to build it, and instead, I'm going to use me as a model for how to build it. And my community, like y'all, will support me because I'm not going to give y'all nothing that like isn't cool. Like I'm not. I'm just not. And if y'all don't want to, cool. You're still part of my community. I don't care. Let's like play and create together. Like it's that. So yeah, it's all about the community because that's what it's really about. It's not all this petty jealousy and who can like do the most beautiful stitches or any of that kind of stuff. Let's just have fun and create together.
yeah,
Where everyone's welcome.
yeah, yeah.
Why not?
Why not? Well, is there anything that you want to say before we close it down? Is there anything that you've never said before anywhere on a platform, or anything you want to say, or any advice you want to give, or any motto, or anything?
I guess just no matter what we choose to do in life, just make sure you're doing it for yourself. Like everything we've been trained and taught, most of that information in our head was not put there based on our best interests. And you got to really look within your own spirit and your own self to determine what is best for you. And people will come and follow. And the biggest lesson that I've been able to learn at this juncture in life is the power that is being authentic. And with flaws and all, be authentic. I didn't realize that would bring people in. Because I think all of us think that if we show our real selves, it will push people away. No, it doesn't. It doesn't at all. It's such a beautiful experience to navigate the planet authentically and for other authentic people to come into my world and for me to give permission to be authentic. Like that's the key to success right there. That's it.
Yeah.
Be authentic.
Yeah. And I tell you something, if you're not authentic, it actually pushes people away because they just go, who are you? You don't even know who you are. Who are you? And you get this energy and this vibe from someone. What are we hiding for? And then you don't end up with anybody. So yeah.
Ding, ding, ding. Be yourself. Be yourself. La, la, la. And come craft with me.
I'd love to come craft with you.
Let's do
Well,
it.
I tell you something, Matthew. I mean, you know, I was just going to say, but it sounds so patronizing, but I was just going to say, my God, you should be so proud of yourself.
Thank you.
Because, and as I say, I've witnessed that journey. And there were times that I found it difficult to watch because I could see you were a human being in agony. And I was like, oh, someone please go put their arms around this person. I found it very difficult to watch. And I saw your meltdown happening. And then I had my own meltdown. So I'm with you. And I think you're incredible. And I think your daughter, Helena, is going to be so... you are going to be like this as people when she... And I know this because I've got it with my daughter.
Yeah.
We are like
Yeah,
this.
we are. We're two piece.
I didn't have that as a child. And I'm doing what you're doing, breaking cycles, new behaviors, you know. And she's amazing because she tells me, she'll go, Mother, that is the previous mother.
I love that.
She's great.
That.
She even said to me in the car the other day, I was having a bit of a moment and I just said, I feel like I'm between two worlds. And she said, Mother, it's because you're ascending and everybody can see it.
Look, you are doing... Yes. Isn't it... It's like, what? You have so much wisdom. Oh my gosh. Right. Oh, we're ascending. We're ascending and some folks aren't going to like it.
No.
Some people won't like it, but you know what? So many more will.
Yeah. Come with us.
Come with us. Let's do it.
Okay. Well, let's go together. Let's ride off in the sunset with you with your nails and your lashes on. Do you know only 2% of the world's population have green eyes?
Really?
Allegedly. I know. And on that note, we shall end it. Thank you so much, Matthew. It's been an absolute joy getting to know you behind the Instagram glass. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Before you go, lovely listener, can I ask you a favour? If you have a friend who you think would enjoy listening to this podcast, would you mind please telling them about it? It helps me to spread the word, and you never know, they might get a life lesson out of it, or at the very least, just have a lovely 40 minutes of relaxing time for themselves. The second thing to say is that if you have enjoyed this, it would really help me if you would give me a little quick like or a comment, especially if you're listening on one of the podcast platforms. And the final thing to say is that if you are a business and you're thinking, how do I get my message out there? Well, you could do it on this podcast. All you have to do is reach out to me, Rachel@breakingtheblocks.com. Thank you so much to everybody who's subscribing, listening, liking, leaving comments, and just generally enjoying the podcast.